at that meeting that led to the development of an additional memo, which you have in your packet. That memo was also sent to interested parties on Friday, February 7th, and then I believe posted on the county website February 10th. Among other things, that memo attempted to address roads, location, waste diversion, the concept of return on investment, the project benefits, the source material, the water, the types of businesses that could locate out there, the specific uses, the cost, bicycle safety, and odors. And there's about 24, I think, categories that we tried to answer. So I'm going to try to touch on a couple of the big ones, the ones that seemed to be the most important at that February 4th meeting. Number one being the location. This site is chosen primarily due to its proximity to the landfill. This is a waste diversion project, so it needs to be near the landfill. Compliance with AB 939 and AB 391, which requires diversion of materials from the landfill, is part of this project, and Mandy can speak more to those if you would like. This site also has the long-term viability, being again that it's next to the landfill and the life of the landfill matters. The size of the property is another reason why this location was chosen, and again, landfill gas, which exists in one place at the landfill. So those are the main reasons why this location was chosen. Another question was that the project benefits weren't explained. So the project benefits are fairly simple. It's to provide economic opportunities and facilitate job creation, to comply with waste diversion mandates, and to promote efficiency between landfill operations and RRP uses. This relationship works in both directions, being that it's not just about diverting material that was on its way to the landfill, but also a short distance between a resource recovery park and the landfill for waste that needs to go there. I do want to note that the county will define what parameters of what businesses will locate there through the RFP process. So the county still, in essence, gets to choose who gets a shot at this site. Costs were part of that memo. $307,000 has been spent on this project to date. $75,000 is estimated in the future for well construction, landscaping, and the entrance. There's $1.1 million budgeted for John Smith Road improvements related to the RRP, and another $850,000 budgeted for the GAP project. That's independent from the RRP. All costs have been and will be paid by the Landfill Reserve Fund, not impact fees or taxes. The types of businesses that have been approached, that the county has been approached by.
Byron,
yes.
Before you continue, I just want to clarify one thing. And Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the realignment of the intersection, which was the first original project, that will be paid for by impact fees, correct?
That'll be a combination of landfill fees and traffic impact fees, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, maybe you asked the question, but in a different way. Steve, Byron, the $1.1 million budgeted and related to the RRP, can you give me a rough estimate if the RRP wasn't part of that $1.1 million? What's the new lower estimate?
Zero.
It'll be zero. Okay, thank you.
The types of businesses that the county has been approached by include the business recycling of agricultural plastic into plastic pellets and other reusable projects, a business that utilizes anaerobic digestion to turn organic materials into energy, a business that looks to recycle food oil to convert to biodiesel, and also businesses utilizing landfill gas as well as other recycling opportunities. These businesses have approached the county about locating here. Today, they are told to locate in industrial zone. That's the appropriate zoning right now, because that's the only zoning that we have that accommodates those uses. There are very few, if any, available industrial zones in the county, and I mentioned this before. We're attempting to rectify that to a certain extent with the general plan update. But this means that a business that wants to locate in San Bernardino County would need to apply for a general plan amendment, a zone change, a use permit, and likely do an EIR, which is a lot for a business and a new technology to undertake. Some of the other issues that came up, there's extensive analysis in the EIR which I want to, I'm not going to go through point by point regarding water sources and stormwater discharge, analysis of odors and biological concerns. With regard to bicycle safety, John Smith Road is not identified in the county bikeway and pedestrian master plan as of 2010, the most recent update. I think that's something the county might want to look to in the future, but as of right now, it is not identified as a road for the bikeway plan. And questions about the feasibility study. The feasibility study analyzed types of businesses and types of materials needed for those businesses that could locate at the site. So feasibility was, will this site work? Will the landfill be able to provide enough materials for this site? And since 2008, the age of the feasibility study was an issue. Since 2008, technology has progressed that there's probably more uses that are available now than were when the feasibility was done. At this time, I would ask that Steve Wittry come back up and discuss what the status of John Smith Road is and the future of the road, if he would. Thank you.
So just for public, I've said this speech before, and as Supervisor Rivas pointed out last time, probably go through this 2 or 3 more times before we're all said and done. The John Smith Road, as you know, is a county road. It direct feed to the landfill. It is subject to a lot of wear and tear, a lot of truck traffic and so forth. There were 3 projects that were identified for the John Smith Road. One is the relocation of the entrance with the Fairview intersection, which would move the location of John Smith Road to coincide with the entrance of the St. Benedict's Church. That project is funded by traffic impact fees and a portion of it from landfill tipping fees. That project is 95% design. It's stuck in an environmental process as we try to figure out how we can mitigate for some particular species out there. That project goes from the intersection of Fairview Road to approximately half mile up John Smith Road where it terminates. A second project that we have underway is what we're calling the GAP project, which takes the from that point of ending of that realignment project to the entrance of the landfill project, landfill itself. That project includes entrance improvements to the landfill, a new left turn pocket, and safety improvements to the entrance, as well as an overlay of the existing John Smith Road. A third project that's been identified, which is the $1.1 million project, would only be pursued if this was to go forward and have a landfill at that location, or a resource recovery park at that location. It would basically consist of widening around the bend from the entrance where the GAP project ends, and it would conclude approximately 500 feet from the proposed resource recovery park entrance. And that would consist of road widening and a left turn deceleration pocket and an acceleration pocket coming out of resource recovery park to make sure that they had a safe passage onto that roadway system. As Byron pointed out, the GAP project is about $850,000. It was delayed a little bit because we were fortunate enough, as you may say, we got a grant, which we were able to put $200,000 extra dollars into that project for rubberized asphalt. So what we'll use is actually another component using rubberized asphalt, which is a superior product in terms of wearability and in terms of noise that's generated by passing vehicles. Part of the questions that happened last time around with what's going to happen to Best Road. During the environmental process, looking at the traffic that was going to be generated or proceed to be generated from the Resource Recovery Park, we found no appreciable traffic increases to Best Road. That's not to say that there's not trucks that use Best Road to go to landfill, just that this project will be no appreciable difference to that load. Therefore, no project has been associated with Best Road at this time. If there's any other questions about the road, I'd be happy to. Oh, there was one other thing that came up last time was a question about PG&E gas lines that crossed under the road and so forth. One of the things that the board should be aware of and the public should be aware of is we have several high-pressure gas lines that crisscross this county in various locations. We coordinate with the utilities, but ultimately it's the utilities' responsibility to make sure that their lines are protected adequately below the surface. They'll be made aware of the construction projects, and they have been made aware. If they have issues that they need to do to protect their lines, it's the responsibility of the utility to do that. So it's something that we consider, but it's not something that is generally analyzed at this phase because we don't have the documents of what actually how the construction of their PG&E lines were performed for that process. So if there's any other questions regarding the roads that you may have, I'm here for those.
Thank you, Steve.
And then at this time, I'd like to bring Mandy up to talk a little about the response to comments in the process, and also to speak regarding what some of the recycling opportunities that are that may exist at a resource recovery park. I don't know where your stuff went. I don't know where. Is that what you wanted?
Oh, we weren't ready.
Oops. So pause it.
Yeah.
Hang on. Okay.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. More technical difficulties here. So good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and members of the public. I guess I just need to say it's been a long journey. And it started off, there were different members sitting in the chair. I think a couple of you are the same. But each time we took a step from the inception of talking about should we do construction and demolition recycling, to moving to, hey, what else can we do in terms of recycling, to, wait a minute, there's some economic development opportunities here. We came back to the board each time, and then that developed into, shall we do a feasibility study? The board said, yes, move forward with that. After doing the feasibility study, the board, we said, where might this be located? Does it make sense to locate it next to the landfill? And we did what's called a fatal flaw analysis on that property to determine whether that was usable as a landfill and for resource recovery park. And after that study was done and those results were brought to the board, that's when the board directed that we prepare an EIR. So as you know, we prepared the first EIR, and as Byron has mentioned, that document was not certified. And the main reason it wasn't certified, and I want to congratulate every person in this room, is because of their comments. And that proves the process works. Because the individuals that responded to that document made some excellent comments, excellent points, and we made the change and brought them back forward to the board, and the board said, that's right, let's revise this document, and so we can respond to those comments. I'd like to give credit to our outside counsel for coming up with the idea of a separate zoning district of Resource Recovery Park, and also to our consultant, Steve Peterson, for saying, no, let's do an overlay, because then we can use this in other parts of the county as well. One of the main things I'd like to say about recycling is that we're really in the midst of a paradigm shift. And it's probably not news to anybody here, so forgive me if I'm telling you something that you all know. But I deal with, I work in and immersed in this industry every single day. And not to make light of or to even think this is funny, but when everyone says you don't get no respect, you think of the Rodney Dangerfield joke. But what is true is that garbage, kind of a lot like sewage, as long as you can flush your toilet and it works and it goes away, we don't think about it. As long as you put your garbage out in the gray cart and your recycling in the blue cart and it goes away, we don't think about it. And another reason why we don't think about it is when we've thrown it away, it no longer has value to us. That's the whole idea behind throwing something away. And so the paradigm shift comes in when we start thinking, well, I've thrown that away. How can somebody possibly make something or make money, or how can something have value? I've thrown it away. There is no value. And what's happening now is that we're learning that more and more materials do have value, but that's going to take time. And I think if we think back to when we first started recycling aluminum, and I'll have to say since World War II, because certainly during World War II, I think everybody was a perfect recycler. They reused and recycled everything. After that, we became a throwaway society, and we had planned obsolescence. We're sort of kind of moving back in that direction. But when we think about recycling, I think we need to move beyond bottles and cans and newspapers. And as Byron mentioned, technology is ever-changing in a vast array of industries, and recycling is just one of them. So what I have here are what started to play here. This first video, it's about 2 or 3 minutes. It's from an individual. His name is Mike Biddle. He founded a company called MBA Polymers. He's a chemist. He now has factories in China and the United Kingdom, and he has one in Richmond. And he created a process to break down plastic, primarily plastics in computers, but he can break down any kind of plastic. And what I'm hoping for individuals to see, if they haven't seen, again, forgive me if you've all seen this type of thing before, is that this is kind of the new face of recycling. And after we show you that one, the next one will be from New Light Technologies. Some of you may have heard that name before. That is a business that approached the county when we were going through the EIR process before we completed it the first time, and we were unable to meet their timelines, among other things, and they ended up building their or setting up their business down in Irvine, California. But I think it's worth seeing what they're doing and seeing what their building and their equipment looks like. I think you'll be really surprised how clean the process is and just the types of things that they're able to do. So the first one, Byron, help me so I don't screw this up.
Go back to the beginning.
I'm a plastics nerd, I guess you could say. And I was working at the very high tech end of the plastics industry when it occurred to me we're going to run out of stuff to make our stuff. And there had to be a way to reuse these plastics. I went to the company I was working for, which was a big plastic chemical company, and I said, hey, I think we should look at recycling our plastics. The initial response I got back was we didn't hire a PhD in plastics to work on garbage. So I decided I needed to go out on my own. The challenge of plastics with respect to recycling is that there are many different types and grades of plastics. The first real use of plastic was to replace ivory. It's called Vaporite. And from that, many different chemistries evolved: polyethylene, polystyrene, ABS, polypropylene. Now it's been just about everything we touch. But how do you separate all of those many different types and grades of plastics from one another so that they can be reused for a high-quality purpose again? And that is the code, basically, we had to crack. We tested everything on the planet, and it took faith. It actually took faith because we didn't know how we were going to do it. You solve one problem, and then you work on the next one. Wow, that actually worked. The next one, the next one. It took a number of different technologies, from food processing, metal manufacturing, from mining technology, combined together and tweaking them in different ways to force plastics to separate. But we're here now, and we've made it happen. We believe we're giving materials a new life. When I first started working on this, the recycle rate for plastics was less than 5% in the world. What a waste of valuable resources. 500 billion pounds of plastic is consumed in the world each and every year, and we have to drill another oil well to get the petrochemicals to make the plastics. What comes out the end of our process is a little plastic pellet that's ready to go right back into a new computer or car part. We are clearly in need of innovation, of technologies that use our precious natural resources more efficiently. We got to where we are today by building on ideas from many different people, many different parts of the world. And now, because we can share ideas so effectively today, we can build on those ideas. The person that ran the U.S. Patent Agency one time made the proclamation, we're done. Everything that's important to have been invented has been invented. And of course, that was about 100 years ago. I wanted to do something to preserve the earth. This is literally a dream come true, to be able to do something I believe in, that matters to me, and trying to spread it around the world.
Ready for the other one? Is that where it began? Yeah.
The original genesis genesis for this project was we came across a newspaper article in 2003 about carbon emissions from farms. And we said instead of taxing that carbon or putting it underground, why not try to use it as a carbon resource to make materials? So that was the start of the project, and again, that was back in 2003. The whole project took about 10 years to go from the original founding idea to where we are today. It was a long series of inventions from where we started to where we are now, and it really keyed in on one specific breakthrough. We use a biocatalyst to convert this carbon over into plastic, and the science to do that had actually existed for a number of decades. What had never been done was a way to do that cost effectively. So our big breakthrough was finding a way to make that biocatalyst operate at a very, very high yield. And today we're operating at about an order of magnitude higher yield than the next best. The way our process works is we take carbon that's being generated at different places, such as farms, landfills, wastewater treatment plants, methane-based carbon. We take that carbon, we capture it, we mix it with air, and we run it into our reactor. When it gets inside of our reactor, we first convert it into a liquid. And then as it's going through our reactor, it contacts a biocatalyst. What this biocatalyst does is it essentially pulls carbon out of this passing airstream and then rearranges it into a long chain of polymers, which is a plastic. And then we pull that plastic out, melt it down, and turn it into pellets. At this point, we're making a whole range of things. In fact, the chair that I'm sitting on here is made out of air carbon. We're also now making cell phone cases. This is what it looks like when it comes out as pellets. But we're now getting into automotive, food storage containers, films, a whole range of things. And the idea is these products are actually able to match on the performance of oil-based plastics, but in fact outcompete on price. And so what we have is a market-driven carbon capture process, which is really exciting for us. Each one of our grades of plastic have a different carbon footprint, but we recently had a third-party independent analysis done that verified that each one of our grades of plastic actually sequester more carbon in the production process than they emit. So every single grade that we make is a carbon sink. So this product here, this product here, this is all actually pulling carbon on a net basis, including the energy, out of the air.
So that's the one that got away. But anyway, I just wanted you to see that's the new face of recycling. So I appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Any questions of Mandy? Okay. Matt, just point of order. Do I reopen the public hearing because we continued it? Do I actually reopen it, or do I just?
The public hearing, you closed it and unclosed it, so it's actually continues to be open. So just continue the public hearing.
Okay. So, okay. Couple things. The people that are standing in the back, there are some chairs up here in the front. If you want to come forward and sit and be a little bit more comfortable. If you get real close, I promise none of us up here bite. So, especially the kids, if you want to come up here and sit with the kids, you're welcome too.
Mr. Chairman, maybe even these chairs here, I know that's probably pretty uncomfortable to be standing all the time.
Yeah.
I think we could welcome
Yeah.
these chairs as well.
If you want to come up and sit, you're welcome to. Once again, if you want to speak, I would ask you to fill out a speaker card and once again, bring it up now before that process starts. And because I am seeing a lot of different faces than what were here last Tuesday, I'm going to go over my list of rules. I apologize to those that were here Tuesday and heard it, but I do want to emphasize that these rules will be adhered to. They are as follows. 3 minutes per speaker. Address the issue of the RRP or John Smith Road, not the landfill. Address members of the Board of Supervisors, not people in the audience. I will not allow any borrowing of minutes from somebody else. No second trip to the microphone unless asked to by a member of the Board of Supervisors. No shouting, talking, or asking questions from your seat. No clapping, no cheering, No disrespecting any member of the Board of Supervisor, staff, or another member of the audience. I will not allow this meeting to become unruly. Thank you for your cooperation. Denise, the first speaker?
Yeah. Keith Snow.
My name is Keith Snow, and retired engineer foreman in around multi companies. I know about recycling because my employer now is called Recycle Rock Base and very successful. Before I got hurt on my own job, I have my own construction company. Well, I've been watching the last meeting, the one before, a lot of concerns before you do this project, because I know when I watched the chairman, you, Jerry, you said you're getting this happen anyway. So that's why I work on voting, because I'm for the city people and the county people. That's why I'm here today. I represent the people. And I feelings, right? Very frustration, because I go to city council meetings. So one is, what's used on the way we have voice, but the way we don't have a voice. I mean, one thing before I got started this project, like I said, there are their concerns. And you mentioned right now earlier, when you're right here, you guys, you get between you, the city, and the county, you guys do bike lanes so people are safe. Like one concerned person said, the guy mentioned when I was watching one meeting, it's horrible to look over at the dump site. And the big old, his property way up in the mountain. It's very unattractive. I want to rebuild the city to make it beautiful. I talked to the city mayor over there. It's very attractive. Our roads are messed up. And one thing I'm good at is hazardous waste. That's my expertise. And when you said solid, that's my concern, because it's called contamination. And I mentioned on the phone, talking Monday about fracking. You said it's open. They did application. That's my concern, because once you contaminate our groundwater, we're through. That's one main concern. Not to me, probably people in this room right here now. So we should work with the people. I mean, me, when I went to the other lady and a gentleman before, I was watching me before, city planning meetings and county meetings. I watched all the meetings and so on. Petisa, very observant. But we should work with the people, not go against the people. I'm working now for the voters to have rights to vote in the county and city. I may take time to do, but I'm gonna make it happen. So that voice of the city and the county. Thank you, sir. That board.
Thank you, Keith.
Christine Kim. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Christine Kemp. I'm a land use attorney from Noland, Hamley, Etienne, and Haas in Salinas, and I'm here representing Tammy Jackson and the residents against the RRP. The folks are very troubled by what's happening with the county and the decision that you may be making tonight. They've hired me because they are taking it very seriously and are very concerned about the CEQA process, the rezoning process, and the effect that this project is going to have on their property. From a CEQA perspective, the project description is inadequate. You have a project description that runs from A to Z in terms of what might be out there, from storing washing machines and recycling those to the types of heavy industrial uses that you saw projected tonight. that is too wide a range for these folks to just give the county a carte blanche with this zoning to say that one of these uses might be what we're going to pick. We need to have a specific project that's analyzed in the EIR with specific consequences so these folks know what they're getting into. Under CEQA, the project description has to be stable and a finite project description. We have a wide open project description here. Also, the project does not meet the project objectives. One of the main objectives is to take material out of the John Smith landfill and recycle that material so that you have landfill space. Unfortunately, these types of projects that you were seeing tonight do not do that. So you're not meeting your project objectives by diverting out of landfill if you're using a big recycler to come in and do some type of project that's not using the landfill. The whole point of the park was to reduce what's going to the landfill, and this type of large activity does not do that. The statement of overriding considerations acknowledges that you have significant impacts to noise, visual character, and greenhouse emissions, and cumulative impacts to visual and scenic vistas. The rationale for allowing that statement of overriding considerations is new jobs and revenue, but there really isn't the data to support what type of jobs are coming in because we don't even know what type of project is going to be there. In the diverted waste stream, if you have this type of a large industrial project at the site, you aren't having a diverted waste stream. You're bringing in actually more material to the site rather than diverting material. You also have inadequate and deferred mitigations. You're talking about projects that will come forward will have their own CEQA review, but we don't know what that review will look like. You're talking about future studies for endangered species, future studies for drainage, future studies for wetlands and mapping. None of that work has been done because we don't have a project to review. And part of the process is allowing an administrative permit for many of the uses at A to P in your new ordinance. Those can be done without even having a public hearing. So you may do CEQA review, but without a public hearing, how is the public going to participate? And the project also is not consistent with your general plan. This is an end run around to rezone from an agricultural use to an industrial use by using an overlay, and you need to amend your general plan to do that. So
If you can summarize.
You have significant issues with the CEQA review for this project, the wide range of description, and the lack of adequate mitigation. So we would strongly urge that you deny this project, deny the rezoning, particularly for the John Smith site, and we ask that you do not approve this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tammy Jackson.
Tammy Jackson, 3503 John Smith Road. I'll make this really quick. The feasibility study was done in 2008, and I know that in our town hall meeting, one of the things, Margie, that you had mentioned was that you guys had no intentions of buying any other property. So my concern is, since the landfills increase the tonnage, if you do allow a big business like the biodiesel to come in that's not utilizing anything out of the existing landfill, the landfill is going to increase its tonnage, and it's going to fill it much faster than you anticipated. So now you've put one business in the 30 acres. You're going to have to rezone the remaining 70 to RRP. Then where do you put the dump when it fills capacity? So at some point that has to be figured out, that where are you going to put the dump to move if this whole acreage ends up being a resource recovery park? Do you have the means to purchase the land, and is there even any additional land available to purchase?
Shorty Silva.
Shorty Silva, John Smith Road. Touching on what Christine said about on the proposed ordinance, page 227 to 231, it says that administrative permits are allowed for businesses. It shows which businesses are allowed if they're inside. So there's no public hearings on these, and I think that's wrong. I think there should be a public hearing on any business that goes in out there and not simply be able to go through administrative permit. And then also on the prohibited uses, composting, which thank you very much for including that as prohibited use, but I would like to see something, I think we all would, fertilizer, any odor-causing materials also be added, significant odor-causing materials be added to that list.
Thank you, Shorty.
Sally Silva.
Good evening, Sally Silva, John Smith Road. I just have one issue. If you do pass this tonight, in Chapter 2 of the EIR, under Project Description, page 2.3, Item 3, it says one of the uses is operation of energy producing and manufacturing business that utilizes landfill gas or biomass for manufacturing process. We find this very problematic because of the fire danger and the environmental issues. I emailed all of you a handout about the environmental issues on landfill gas, but I would like to put these in record, please. It also goes against the definition, again, of the RRP, and it does not save the life of the landfill, which we've heard before. It also changes the traffic trips because now you have product going to and from. So for that reason, if it does pass, we would like to add this item to the prohibited uses on page 230, and that would be the biomass production, if that could be under the prohibited uses. Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address this board at this time? Okay. Yeah. Yes. If you'll fill out a speaker card after you speak. Thank you.
I'm Hal Jimenez from Heatherwood Estates. I'd like to thank you all for helping serve on your boards. I don't think anybody in this room is, I see the nice show here about all the recycling, and I think everybody in this room would agree that recycling is a good thing and we all should recycle and do more. I think the biggest point, what seems to be getting overridden, is that's in a poor position. It's in a poor location. So I just urge you also to please vote no on rezoning, and let's put it somewhere where all the vehicles don't have to come through our town all the way to the back corner. That's all.
Please, nothing from the audience.
Thank you.
If you want to address the board, you may step up to the podium.
Barbara Tadeo, 575 Heatherwood. I'm reading off of the questions that you had, filled out. And what frustrates me more than anything on topography on number 3, this is on page 2 of 8, it says approximately 15 of the 30 acres are currently buildable. Well, if you're trying to bring in an outside business, first you're telling them they don't have any roads in there, then you're telling them they only have 15 acres out of the 30 acres, but then if you go down it says eventually, so is the rest of it going to come out of county funds? To me, this is another reason for having it be a totally ridiculous spot for an RRP. Also, my question too is it says 75% are in county. When I see those massive trucks going by, which I see from my property, they're not county, they're all out of county. So I would really question the number of out-of-county trucks. To me, it should be 75% out of county and only 25% in county when you see what's going by. It's obvious the majority is out of county and not, and that's another reason for voting no. I mean, to me, these questions, many of them are untrue. But like I said, 15 acres is only really usable as opposed to 30?
One last time, anybody else would like to address this board? Seeing none, then I'm going to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, can we take a quick 5-minute break?
All right, I've had a request for a 5-minute break, so let's reconvene at 8 o'clock.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We're ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Byron?
I just wanted to, thank you. I wanted to make a comment about the odors, just because it was brought up, concern about the odors, and then I'm going to leave you with the staff recommendation. The reason why the odors was identified as a less significant impact is because all the uses are to be conducted indoors. And so that was by design in order to keep odors from happening in the community and affecting any neighbors. So with that, I'm going to give the staff recommendation. We've continued the public hearing that you consider the Planning Commission's recommendations set forth in Planning Commission Resolution 2014-01, that you adopt the resolution certifying the environmental impact report, adopting the required CEQA findings and other findings required by planning and zoning law and the county code provision, and adopting the recommended mitigation measures, mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and statement of overriding considerations, and adopt the ordinance amending the San Benito County Code to create a new overlay zoning district, resource recovery park district, and to rezone approximately 30 acres of property located on John Smith Road to the newly created Resource Recovery Park overlay zoning designation, approving zone change 10-171 with the recommended conditions of approval. I'm here, Mandy's here, Steve's here to talk about roads. If there's CEQA questions, Steve Peterson is here, the author of the environmental document. We're all here for any questions the board may have.
Any questions of any of the board members? Supervisor Rivas?
I'll go ahead and kick it off. So I'll have a question, and I'd like to make my comments after that.
Okay.
My comments really depend. I've been writing down notes all evening, and so I might be a little bit jumbled, but I'll start with the question. I think it's for Ms. Rose. I'll wait till she gets to the podium. So my question is related to it was a statement that was echoed a couple times here this evening, which is the process by which, so we move forward this evening, say the property gets rezoned. What is the process for interested investors that want to develop at this site?
Okay, sure. Just for your edification and the members of the audience, if they weren't at Planning Commission, we did discuss that briefly, and that is any of the businesses that have expressed an interest so far have been told what I'm about to say, which is there is an RFP process that will be done, similar to the one we did in the past. We have sort of a better idea of maybe what may be out there now, but the staff will put together an RFP that will have to be approved by the board before it goes anywhere, and it will define, what we're looking for in terms of infrastructure, how they may want to partner with us, what are they looking to buy or lease the land. I mean, there's a whole menu of things that we will put for your review before it goes anywhere, and we'll try to find out how much material will they be diverting from the landfill. What's the product that they make from it? Are they an interim processor? I mean, just try to define everything that they do, but have the RFP give us as much information, or elicit from them as much information as possible, and then this board will be making the decision about anybody that locates there.
Thank you.
Actually, Mr. Chair, before Mandy, I think someone from the audience or our staff said that it could be an administrative level decision. Is that correct?
The way the ordinance is written, it's patterned after actually what the board had requested, and Byron can probably speak better to this because it's a planning issue. So I'll let him address that.
A couple of years ago, we made amendments to the industrial zoning district as well as the commercial district to remove the requirement that a C district review or M district review was required for every single project or change to a project that could be permitted in those zones. When we developed the RRP zoning designation, we mimicked the industrial zones. In fact, it's in, I think, the same section of the code to follow that pattern based on the board's direction in the past.
Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. And first, I want to thank everyone who is here this evening and thank, in particular, residents who have invested a lot of time. Ms. Jackson, the Silvas, I know the Eads have called me. Many people have called me. I've read all the emails. And even though I've been doing this now for this, I'm going on my third or my fourth year, I believe. My third year. It never ceases to surprise me the decisions that we have to make at the local level. Honestly, local government, elected officials at the local level, the cities, counties, towns, other jurisdictions at the local level, they do not get their due. And I say that because later on this year, in the fall of 2014, I'm going to be I'll be teaching my first class at Gavilan College, and it's a class of it's an introduction to political science, and I'm going to do my best to do what my teachers they didn't impress on me until I was in graduate school, which was talk about local government. Because in my opinion, after studying all three forms of local government, or all three forms of government, local government is the most influential form of government. And it's the most influential form of government because it provides ordinary citizens like you and I the opportunity to directly influence and participate in the decisions that we make here that impact each and every one of you. And so, like I said, I may seem a little jumbled here, but from the moment I was elected, as I said at our previous meeting, Mr. Munzer and I guess you can say that we were thrown into this whole process, as it started well before we were supervisors. In my time on the board regarding this project, there seemed to be a lot of the confusion, a lot of questions, and a lot of concerns. And the one question I have asked myself throughout this process and recently is it good, government policy and protocol to rezone this particular parcel prior to knowing what businesses may locate at this site? And to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know if it's good on our part or if it's bad on our part, because I can argue both ways. But I can tell you that I view this resource recovery park, I view this RRP because what I believe it represents potential economic gains for our county. Because job growth and business creation must be vital components of where we want to go as a county. I've said it when I was running for supervisor. I'll be the first to tell you that I don't take, when it comes to growth in our county and development, I don't take it lightly. I'm probably the one supervisor that's voted against all of the residential projects that have been before our board. And I say that because I'm concerned about our infrastructure. And I can tell you that the answer I just heard, should we rezone this property and we have to create an RFP, this isn't the end of the road. And I say that because my concerns are about infrastructure moving forward. And infrastructure at this site, this proposed site, is the key to eventually developing the resource recovery park. And I'll say it again, it's about infrastructure, in my opinion. And if investors who are unwilling to make the necessary infrastructure improvements that we're going to require to be out there, then it's a project and proposal that certainly isn't going to get my support. And that's why I think the next step, should this action move forward tonight to rezone this property, I think it's extremely important and critical to get more input from the community, because we certainly want to do what's right. We certainly want to not devalue your properties out there. We don't want to reduce your quality of life. But I think that there are opportunities to improve it. I really do. And I think that in any of the decisions that we make here, it's always a lose-lose. There's always someone that is happy. There's always someone that is very upset. And I understand that. And that's why we have decided to be in these positions and put ourselves and throw our necks out there, because in the end, we're trying to do and we're attempting to do what's best for our entire our community and our county. And when you have a county that has an extremely high unemployment rate, where our county invests very little in the progress of economic development, these are opportunities, in my opinion, that you've got to take advantage of. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Barris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to also thank everybody for their input, their emails, their concerns, and it has actually helped make my decision a little bit easier. There were two negatives that I would like to point out, and a lot of positives that I saw with this project moving forward. The one negative is that we really, until businesses locate there, we really don't know what the revenues for the county are going to be. But those will happen, and those will be determined before we approve any project that comes in and see if there is a benefit to San Benito County. The second thing that I think is a big negative is that I do know that that area is used for bicycling. And there are no bicycle lanes on John Smith Road because they're not part of the bike lane master plan that was created by a community committee. So that was not part of the plan. So that's a negative for me. But for many years, we have been very irresponsible and as a nation, and we have been very wasteful. We have, and I feel very strongly about this, that we have an obligation to the generations that are to come to be resourceful, to reuse, and to recycle, and take this to another level, to save and to protect our environment. So I'm going to mention the positives that I found as I read through the entire EIR, as I read through the ordinance, as I read through all the material that we have gotten. First of all, this is going to be a controlled area where recycling, reusing, energy production, and businesses can locate, controlled. And when I say controlled, it's because they are under some very strict guidelines. There's a potential for economic development, very much needed in this county. Recommended conditions of approval address permitted uses, conditional and prohibited uses, and development standards. We have input on those development standards. Individual permitting process for the future projects. So every project that comes in has to go through an individual process. The air and water quality are heavily governed by the state of California, which in this case is, even though there's complaints by a lot of people that we're very stringent, this is a great thing that we have those, that government. Development will be phased and considered independent of any other project. Like I said earlier, every project has to have its own, get approved by its own merits. The intent of the RRP is to provide increased opportunities for material recycling, utilize energy resources associated with our current John Smith landfill. There's exterior landscaping plans before approval for any use. An annual report is expected to be turned in to ensure that there's compliance with the conditions of approval. The program-level EIR includes mitigation, it includes monitoring, and it includes a reporting program. The final EIR was completed in compliance with CEQA. There had to be, and we found, a reasonable balance between achieving the objectives of the project and reducing the potential for environmental impacts. The draft and final EIR were revised to meet the concerns from many of you here. We made sure that we listened to you. It went from industrial, which was too broad, to what we now are wanting to approve, the RRP that has been proposed. The resolution states that the Board of Supervisors intends to adopt each mitigation measure. So every mitigation measure that is on there, we are going to adopt. It also states that it is that if a project results in some unavoidable significant environmental impacts, even After application of all feasible mitigation measures, the county must consider the feasibility of alternatives to the project which could avoid or substantially lessen the unavoidable significant environmental impacts. So we are hoping and planning to do exactly what you have asked us to do. The John Smith landfill is across the RRP, so that minimizes the materials that have to be transported per the study that was done. Other locations were considered, but for an RRP, only 2 met. For this type of RRP, only 2 met the size and the traffic. Much of the traffic would have to come through the city of Hollister. So I believe that we have listened to you, and I believe that we're mitigating all the concerns. So with that being said, I will support the RRP zoning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Mandy and Steve for all the information you provided to the board, to myself. I also like to thank all the members of the audience for all your emails, your texts, your documentations, or even your phone calls. Even from the person who actually sent me an email from Antarctic. I was like, okay. And I kind of wanted to email back the person saying, oh, how's the weather down there? But I didn't know the answer. But on a serious matter now, I believe that it is important that we do this in the right way. It's about fiscal matters, about a legacy that we're going to leave in this community. I know a lot of answers and questions were entertained. I know some of the answers that were responded by our staff were not the answers that some of the members wanted to hear. But we work hard to provide as much information to the public and provide the answers. I also believe that we do need to work on developing recycle. We shouldn't shy away from new technologies that will be coming around the corner. And I'll wait when the vote comes up to the vote which way I'll go. I don't want to go on and on because I believe both Supervisor Rivas and Supervisor Barrios have said a lot of questions and answers and responses that we've given, so I don't want to delay the vote any longer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank everybody for taking the time and expressing your views to the board. It's very important to us. It helps, no matter what the decision is, it does help the outcome in the long run. As you're probably all aware, I'm very supportive of this project, and by no means do I think that this is a detriment to anybody's property or quality of life in that neighborhood. Really, and I speak from my district that, you know, I have had some economic growth in, and by your interest and your participation in the process, it really emphasizes to the Board of Supervisors, to the Planning Commission, that we have to take into account, you know, our neighbors. You know, John Smith landfill has been out there for, you know, years and years and years, and I think we've done a relatively pretty good job operating it in the interest of the entire county. And with this project is zoning, we hope to bring in businesses that will encourage recycling and reuse, that will add convenience to all of the county residents. It also adds a potential for jobs. As one of the film clips noted, that was an opportunity that we could have had here in San Bernardino County. Not only was there a potential to recycle those plastics and create material that could be used to manufacture other types of goods that could have created more jobs elsewhere in other areas of Hollister. So, you know, there's opportunities that are out there, but will not be realized unless we have the adequate zoning to accommodate that. But we certainly can do this without infringing upon your quality of life. And I think we're tasked in the fact that I want to probably bump into you in a store or downtown someplace and say, you know what, it did not turn out as we feared. You know, we sometimes fear change, and I sometimes fall in that trap myself. But I'll certainly make that a priority, that your input is be there for when we do and consider the business, and if this zoning change goes through tonight. So I appreciate your time, and thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I too want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank you for your orderly conduct, both last Tuesday and tonight. I really appreciate that. You were attentive, you listened to the speakers, and you listened to this board. I do have I have a prepared statement that I want to read. I want to go over the objects of the RRP, some of which have been touched on tonight, so if you'll bear with me. The resource recovery part is a very important project. Its objects, according to the revised final EIR, are to develop a new combined overlay zone called the resource recovery part, to provide increased private business opportunity, to facilitate temporary solid waste storage, transfer, treatment, processing, source separation, and recovery, disposal, material, recycling, reusable item centers, recycle content manufacturing, construction and demolition material sort lines, wood and green waste grinding facilities, energy and gas recovery project, and similar use. To facilitate the county compliance with AB 939 and divert over 50% of the waste, and AB 341 to recycle additional 25%. To develop a resource recovery facility on a site that maximizes the efficient diversion of waste stream from the John Smith Road landfill and allow for adequate space for maximum number of operation. To provide increased opportunities for material recycling and the processing, the sale, both wholesale and retail, of material, and to utilize energy resources associated with the John Smith landfill. To develop facilities on the project site and other locations in the county that promote greater source separation of materials. To divert residential and commercial waste for recycling or reuse. To process a maximum amount of mixed waste and source separated waste, creating products of value. To develop a resource recovery site that is viable for a long period of time by providing adequate space to allow facility flexibility, interaction, succession in response to changing market and technology. To achieve the highest resource value in transforming waste to potential resources. To provide economic development opportunity in San Benito County. And to achieve the above environmental objectives in a way that is economically viable and socially responsible. I believe that we can all agree that these are reasonable, worthy, and honorable goals for the county to achieve. And even getting to this point has required a long process many of you have been involved in, and many changes to the original goals. But the one question I believe has not been answered is this the best site for this project? I have worked for 3 years trying to answer that question by listening to the concerns of the residents of San Benito County, although they may have thought that I wasn't listening. Through this long process, I have come to the conclusion that all these goals, except maybe one, can be and are being done elsewhere in the county. One of the goals even states that we want to develop other locations in the county. We have recognized that there are problems with this site. We have banned composting, which is usually a major component of a recycling project. We have tried to address the road issues, but I'm not sure whether John Smith will ever be able to handle the volume of traffic that will be approved. And we want to encourage sale, whether wholesale or retail, of material, which will also add to the traffic of our county roads. We have acknowledged that the site has other issues by requiring a landscaping plan be in place before any business can be approved. And we recognize the necessary infrastructure is not in place. According to the RFEIR, development of the RRP project site would require grading, paving, utilities, drainage, and facility development within the RRP site. Also, wastewater generated by the businesses within the proposed project would be routed to a site-specific sewage holding tank, which would be required to be removed and transported by a private pump and haul company. In addition, I'm not sure that this site is viable for a long period of time or provide adequate spacing to allow facility flexibility. With the amount of the homes that we have already allowed in the area and the projected new housing developed pending in this, is this site viable for a long period? And finally, are we being socially responsible? When we have this many people at the end of the process who question and are worried about whether their quality of life is being affected, I'm just not sure that we have fully addressed the issues of the roads and the increase in noise and odors. I fully support the creation of a resource recovery overlay zone, but I cannot support the site of John Smith Road. I believe we should explore other sites. Why are we hauling tons of material over our county roads only to have it hauled back out over those same roads? Why not develop a site closer to the major roads, especially the state highway system? If our goal is to develop economic opportunities in San Benito County, then we need to pick a site that will give those businesses the best shot at success. There are just too many issues with John Smith Road site for that to happen. We should be collaborating with the City of Hollister and or the City of San Juan to find a site better suited and closer to infrastructures that will be needed. Then we need to work at marketing that site or sites together. For these reasons, I cannot support the full action that is now before us, and I would entertain a motion that we approve the resource recovery overlay without approving this site specific.
Is that a form of a motion, Mr. Chair?
I would entertain that motion.
I'll second that motion. Call for a question.
Okay, there's a motion and a second, and I've been asked to do a roll call vote. If we can do a roll call vote.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yes.
Supervisor Rivas?
No.
Supervisor Patello?
No.
Supervisor Barrios?
No.
Supervisor Munzer?
Yes. What is the wishes of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we adopt resolution number 2014-13, that we certify the environmental impact report adopting the required CEQA findings and other findings required by planning and zoning law and county code provision, and adopting the recommended mitigation measures, the mitigation monitoring and reporting program and statement of overriding considerations, that we adopt ordinance number 922, amending the San Benito County Code to create the new overlay zoning district, Resource Recovery Park, the district, and to rezone approximately 30 acres of property located on John Smith Road to the newly created Resource Recovery Park, overlay zoning, the designation, approving zone change 10-171 with recommended the conditions of approval.
Mr. Chair, before the board takes further action on that. I need to point out to the board that on both the ordinance and the resolution that's before the board tonight, there is a change as to the page 23 of the resolution and page 14 of the ordinance. The original one that was circulated had the wrong date. It referred to the meeting of next week. So we have passed out, and there's copies available in the back, the corrected versions that shows the board taking the action tonight, February 11th, as opposed to the next meeting. So in Supervisor Rivas's motion, if he would just number 3 and number 4 just state that as corrected in the resolution and as corrected in the ordinance, I would appreciate that.
Sure, and I will include in my motion the corrections as noted by staff in 3 and 4, and the adoption of resolution number 2014-13 and the adoption of ordinance number 922.
Thank you.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and we have and then we'll just do the roll call vote again.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
No.
Supervisor Rivas?
Yes.
Supervisor Patella?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrios?
Yes.
Supervisor Munzer?
No. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you, everyone.
I don't know what the